there's like a Dungeons and Dragons movie coming out.
Oh yeah.
And it's like we're kind of way overdue. I'm kind of surprised we never talked about Dungeons and Dragons on the show. You know, we're kind of like a nostalgia show. You know, we're in the 90s, we're in the 80s. You know, we're all over the map. But like Dungeons and Dragons, like I know it like originated in the 70s, but
yeah.
like I think of it as like an 80s thing because that was kind of like the big. You know, when it really blew up. You know?
I remember the cartoon a lot.
The cartoon, yeah.
Cartoon was an early access point for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't play it until the when I was in high school.
Okay, yeah.
I played it a lot at summer camp. Mm-hmm. I got to play it outside. Like, while we were, like, between doing shit at the summer camp, we would have a table outside and play Dungeons and Dragons. It was so awesome.
When I was, like, in first grade, I mean, that was kind of when it, like, entered my radar. And so I was like, first learning to read and stuff. So that was like some of the first reading I did.
Oh, wow.
And like we would play it, but we kind of didn't, like we just kind of look at the maps and just kind of like wing it and stuff. Like we weren't there yet to really play. But like I just remember just being very very interested in that world and wanting to find out about it and the artwork and everything. And it was the hot thing. Like it was like, this is the thing you want to play. And then, pretty shortly after, there was like the backlash. The backlash, this part of the larger sort of satanic panic of the 80s. I don't know how much time there was between, like, it showing up on my radar and then it being, like, verboten,
The devil's business.
Yeah, right.
There's that Mazes and Monsters movie with Tom Hanks.
I remember seeing the commercials for that. I never saw the actual thing, but I remember the commercials. Yeah, Mazes and Monsters.
And you're right, too, Tom, like, getting together to play Dungeons and Dragons can be like kind of, you need a lot of folks to do it.
Yeah.
So like, but I'm with you. I love the material. I like to pour over the maps. Like
those
I think
paintings,
the paintings,
the maps.
Just reading about the character and like, there's enough material I think in that world that like, even if you're really not like playing it full on, you can get enjoyment out of like reading through all the writings and materials.
I think that's a lot of the enjoyment that people. I mean, at least for me, like I have like read a ton of that stuff and kind of immerse myself in it. I'm Tom Scioli, author of I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, which you can click on the pre-order link in the show notes below. And I'm also the author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, which there's an order now link down there too.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli or on Instagram at Tom_Scioli.
Follow me on Instagram at cinema_2.
I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons like more lately, like more in like maybe the past 5 or 6 years than like the whole rest of my life. And yeah, like I wasn't allowed to play Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, which sort of added to, and it was, for satanic reasons.
Oh yeah.
But it added to the mystique. It made it more kind of like even more interesting to me,
Thinking back, the first kind of like Dungeons and Dragons-y thing was with my cousins, my older cousins. Once again, Noni had their old toys laying around that I would like get into, and there was something. Do you remember? Can you ID this for me? It was like a game with dice, and you rolled the dice into this like castle-shaped impression, and there was like a skull, a shield, like I think. Like, Noni was calling it, like, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
But it was, like, another kind of game.
Yeah, that sounds really familiar. I don't know it offhand. But, yeah, Dungeons and Dragons was kind of, like a catch-all term for, like, any kind of sort of, like, fantasy game.
Thing.
And, like, now it's, like, there's all these, like, subgenres and everything, and everybody has such a sophisticated understanding of it. But just, like, any kind of, like, imaginary role-playing game was Dungeons and Dragons back then, One of the few times that I played as a kid, it was I was coming into an already existing campaign, and they already had like a bunch of characters already set up, and so like one of the guys wasn't there, one of the kids wasn't there, and so I played his character, which is like that's not the way I want to play Dungeons and Dragons. I want to be like dead serious, like I don't want to goof around.
Like I do kind of go off the rails in like
yeah, well when like it's really the thing of Dungeons and Dragons is really interesting, but like when you get like a crew together to play, there's like interpersonal dynamics that come out, and there's usually somebody in the group who thinks they're a little too cool for this, or they want to kind of make it about them, and so they kind of like they undercut it and shtick it up and kind of where or try to goof around. And sometimes Brian Posehn has a Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
Oh, it's a good
Nerd
one.
Poker.
Nerd Poker.
Yeah. And I'll listen to
ton
it.
of that.
And sometimes there's like a guy in there who's kind of doing that. And it's like, I just get super annoyed. I'm like, get that guy the fuck out of there.
You're like, I know what you're talking about. And
yeah, where it's like,
that's not the realm I operate in.
Because it is like, essentially, it's like an improv exercise.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a certain amount of trust. And there is a vulnerability. It's like, we're all pretending to be elves and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like, it would be very easy for somebody to come in and shame everybody in the room.
Yeah. That Nerd Poker's a great show.
Yeah, that is a good show.
Brian's like the barbarian.
Especially like during pandemic, it was like kind of like, that would be fun getting together with a bunch of people and rolling dice. And then like they roll the dice into like a sugar bowl. And like the sound of like dice going into a sugar bowl, like the clinging, it's like a very, very satisfying sound.
The during lockdown, I did a little D20 action online with my buddy Colin. He's into D&D too, and we did Call of Cthulhu.
Okay.
And I like in that there's a thing where you can like if you can go mad,
mm-hmm.
like just go completely insane.
Yeah,
lose your sanity.
Yeah, which happens in H.P. Lovecraft stories,
Like on Nerd Poker, I always love I like how they kind of go into outer space. Feels like I like where he goes into different areas.
Yeah,
and stuff. That's always fun.
It's interesting. Like sometimes there'll be like a really dangerous sounding situation, and it's like okay, ostensibly you're playing a game, like you're really doing like a communal story, like everybody's coming together and improvising a story together, but you're also kind of playing a game. And so some people sort of treat it as a game, so sometimes they'll be entering like an area where there's signs of danger. And as a game player, they'd be like, okay, well, let's avoid that danger. But what they're actually doing is like avoiding the call to adventure. It's like, no, like that's a way to let you know a lot of exciting stuff is going to happen over here. And then now it's like the dungeon master has to like change gears and come up with a new plan because the whole game that he had planned was like over here. And now everybody's going over there.
I've done the same thing too. I get scared, Tom. I'm scared.
Yeah. Yeah, or like you're on a boat and then you come to an island and then they're like, okay, well let's keep going. And it's like, wait, no, that island's where the adventure is.
I'm gonna catch some Z's and stay on the boat, or like.
I never had like I've only played like a handful of times, and I've never had like a group, like an ongoing group of people who are like all committed to it. So it seems like it would be a good like sort of friendship exercise too. Like it would kind of like you'd kind of get a sense. Like everybody would get a sense of each other better, and like, kind of almost like a trust exercise or like a team building exercise for like your group of friends.
Of course, like like the avoiding the
call
to adventure. That's like
is that your style of play? Because it's like because part of the game is like, again the game aspect. It's like you're trying to like avoid traps and avoid peril, and sometimes there's clues within the game of like maybe don't go for this or don't go for that, and so it's like, oh well, maybe all that stuff they're saying about all this scary stuff going over here is that, but it's not. It's just a way of letting you know that adventure lies this way.
There was one part in this game where I was just like, I thought everyone was like was on the side of the, or no, it was in Smith or something.
Okay.
And I thought this one game where I thought everyone was secretly a bad guy, and I was just like beating
up your party,
beating people up. And then, but finally, somebody they were bad, but I was like,
you're like better safe than sorry. You just like kill everybody, and then basically that makes you the wacko,
or not like the other people in the party, like
like non-player
like NPCs and stuff.
My first encounters with Dungeons and Dragons were sort of like the early days of even like computer role-playing games. So it kind of took a while before they kind of caught up too. So like I've been getting into board games a lot recently. We did like a board game episode, and we're gonna do some more. But like there were these like Dungeons and Dragons board games like Wrath of Ashardalon and Legend of Drizzt, and like a couple where it's like. It's almost like Hero Quest. It's like Dungeons and Dragons as Hero Quest. It's this big box. or what's the other one? Gloomhaven or something.
Yeah.
Like it's like these Dungeons and Dragons things that are like Gloomhaven or something. So you get this big fat box with like a million little interchangeable puzzle piece map bits of like dungeons and caves and stuff. You get all these amazing little miniatures, dragons and stuff. And so that kind of got me into like, so I started playing some of those, and but like as I played them, there's like interesting tactics and stuff. But it kind of I pretty quickly got to, came to the conclusion that, okay, this is a way, there's like the board game craze going on or whatever, or maybe we're like past the peak of that, but like it was like a way of hooking board game fans into regular Dungeons and Dragons, because it kind of leads you there, because you get to a point where you sort of realize it is like an improvisational exercise, and like you don't really need all these maps and stuff. Like the maps, the pieces and stuff were an appeal for me. Like
definitely.
And when you'd watch like in the early days of Dungeons and Dragons, and you'd watch like a movie where somebody's playing Dungeons and Dragons, like maybe like E.T. or something,
yes.
And you'd see that, and they would always have like some kind of model that they built of like a dungeon with all these, and it always looked so great. And I know like Dungeons and Dragons kind of spun out of like sort of like the miniatures gaming stuff of like sort of historical battles with little miniatures, and then evolved into this thing that was almost entirely in the imagination. And so then like the dice and stuff, it started to occur to me that like the dice, even that is like, because sometimes like the dungeon master will fudge the outcome, where it's like, you rolled the dice and like the dice roll would be catastrophic and would like end the story, or it would like avoid some like really interesting bit that like you can't wait for everybody to play. And so it's like okay, I'll just and they don't tell the players. You're kind of, like,
of course,
everything behind the dungeon master's little shield is like a lot of like that's behind the scenes and stuff.
That's so true, because like there's a trillion rules in Dungeons and Dragons, but there's no rules. So it's like I love that aspect where it's like you can fudge stuff and just keep the story at large like going.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what dawned on me with it, was that the like the game aspect and stuff it's almost like a misdirection. It's almost like the dice and the numbers and the rolls and things are almost like a way to keep your left brain occupied. It's kind of like something to hold in your hand, like the same thing with all those figures and stuff. It's like a way to keep your left brain occupied, gives you some math that you can do and stuff like that. And so your left brain's occupied so that your right brain, sort of the creative, intuitive side, is freed up to like, do all the improv. And so like those things, like all those rules and whatnot, are kind of like, it's kind of like hypnosis, or like it's self-hypnosis, it's group hypnosis. And so really the essence is just this like improv, this communal storytelling. And so I've gotten to the point where I've sort of put all that stuff aside, and then it's just like, just sort of, if I'm the quote-unquote dungeon master, I'll just like, create like a scene, like, and whatever, and then, the other people sort of play it out, and then we're just improvising like a story together. It's not easy to get to that point, but once you get to that point, you realize you don't really need all that other stuff.
Yeah, like, and we could save the story, like take notes, like, and then have you can relive it or like look back on it.
Yeah, there's plenty of examples of people who wrote, novels that were, repurposed their Dungeons and Dragons campaign, or or made like comics or something where it's basically their Dungeons and Dragons campaign or something.
Yeah, it's like a group. We're creating a group story on the fly.
Yeah, and it made me sort of regret that I didn't get more into Dungeons and Dragons earlier, because I feel like it's like if you're a storyteller, like if you're a writer or whatever, like what great practice.
Tapping into the source here though, and it had like a little comeback with Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, yeah, that wasn't
not
big.
A comeback, but like
you're right. I would say it was like a comeback. It was like a blip. Maybe like introduced it to like a new generation. and then kind of reminded people who were into it and maybe hadn't played it. Yeah, kind of brought it back. And again, the way they played, like they're and they're copying all those 80s riffs and E.T. Like they're doing a version of E.T. So they have the same kind of thing where they have this cool little like shoebox model of like the cave and stuff. And
it looks great. It's nice to have those little figures too.
Yeah, the figures, the bits of again, a way of ushering you into this semi-hypnotic state where you can, let down your guard a little bit and tell like a crazy story of elves and whatnot, and so those little trinkets or whatever, talisman. Kind of. Now again, when you talk about it this way and talk about a hypnotic state and talisman and things, it is kind of feeding into that like satanic panic, because that's how they would kind of describe it. Like they'd be like, oh, it's it's getting you into witchcraft and stuff, because it's like you're being hypnotized, you're being your mind is being taken over, and it starts out and it seems innocuous enough, but it's leading you down this path. And there are parts where it's like okay, you're summoning a demon or whatever, and it's like
somebody needs to create like a really cool like throwback 80s kind of horror movie that's like this. The Dungeons and Dragons is the satanic. It's like
that all that stuff's real,
and like you're really like fucking calling on like creatures and stuff. Wouldn't that'd be rad? Like.
One of the things, like, I sort of, read about Dungeons and Dragons, because, like, the origins of, like, I don't quite remember a world before Dungeons and Dragons, like, it's hard to think of it as, like, something that, like, people came up with, and it was like two guys. There's, like, Gary Gygax, who's, like, the real famous one, and then there was, like, another guy who was kind of like the Iwerks or the Jack Kirby, like, he was, like, sounds like he did all the work, and the Gary, and that he was kind of like, this sort, he was kind of like, just this, I don't know, hippie or like that. He was kind of like, hey, I created this really cool thing, and anybody who wants to use it can use it. Go for it. And then Gary Gygax was the one who was like, let's make it proprietary. Let's,
like the business
kind of thing. Like reading about it, it was like one of the influences of it was the Hammer horror films. That these dungeons that they talk about were like, they were referencing Hammer horror movies.
A lot of those dungeons,
because it is kind of like in when you talk about, like, because you look at sort of medieval stuff and things, and it's like there weren't a ton of stories of like King Arthur and Lancelot walking around through dungeons. It was a lot of like mountains and this and that, attacking castles, but like the dungeon thing, so that's interesting. It also, like, very obviously, it's like Tolkien is such a touchstone for Dungeons and Dragons. It's kind of like a pop art Tolkien. It's kind of like Tolkien with like a bunch of like sort of trashy stuff kind of grafted onto it,
sizzling.
And like and more specifically, it's like that segment of like of like Lord of the Ring, like the Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, the Mines of Moria are like, that's the dungeon, that's the bulk of it, and then you fight this big boss monster at the end, and then prior to it, you you go to Rivendell or whatever, and you get your mission, and maybe stock up on your supplies, you get your lambus bread and all this kind of stuff, and then you go into the dungeon, into the Mines of Moria.
And there is a new Lego Rivendell.
I saw it.
Did you see that?
I saw it. I'm
looking
very tempted. I have some Lego VIP points to spend, on like discounts and stuff. So that one is very tempting.
It looks like a lot of bang for the buck in there. There's like 20 minifigures or something like that. It looks great. I guess the true first Dungeons and Dragons-y thing we had mentioned before on the show was like Hero Quest.
Hero Quest, yeah. And Hero Quest, like, again, like that, those Dungeons and Dragons things that I've been playing lately, they're obviously going for like a Hero Quest. Yeah, Hero Quest captured my imagination. And like, that's the Dungeons and Dragons that I wanted to play. Like, I didn't want to imagine a bunch of stuff. I wanted to have a board with all these kind of things, and like a bunch of like, trolls or something all lined up, and you're in the middle. And
it's great. I love seeing the little doorways, and I love the bookcases with the little skull on there, and then
skull on top.
And great, like, you're fighting skeletons, trolls, orcs, like running around.
Yeah, they look like $1 million. Great painting on the front. I bought. I mean, it's a whole long, like, maybe diehard Total Recall show fans might have heard this story before, but I had Hero Quest, and I had it for like years and just never, I got it for $1, just never played it in years and years. I'm like, I'm never going to play this. So I like gave it away. And then a couple years later, I was like, I want Hero Quest. And then looking around, it's like, $100 or whatever. And so I eventually broke down and bought Hero Quest, spent $100. Like, I got it at Half Price Books, and it was like complete in box. It's not easy to find it. And I was like very excited. I got it. It is complete, except the dice in it are like just normal dice. And like the Hero Quest dice are these kind of like wooden dice with like swords on them and stuff.
Those are the dice that look like those ones
you were
I was talking about.
Yeah, and it's a tiny, tiny detail, but it's kind of crushing.
I know,
not having
dude,
those
that's
dice.
devastating.
Yeah, but again, I still haven't played it. I haven't played my Hero Quest once.
You need the Hero Quest.
You know what?
Keep
Though,
that in mind.
Like, if I'm in the mood for Hero Quest, those sort of Wrath of a Shardalon ones, it's like they're a little more modern. They're like
scratch the itch.
And yeah, and my one, like, there was like Advanced Hero Quest around the same time too. And Advanced Hero Quest had sort of the puzzle piece dungeons that you could put together.
Oh yeah.
And that's more what I want. I don't like the fact that Hero Quest is this board. Like, I know you can sort of cover up different parts of it and things like that, and put doors and things, so it's a different dungeon every time. But I don't like the fact that it's like this established dungeon every time. I like those Dungeons and Dragons ones, how they're like puzzle pieces that branch off, and
And that's a cool
I like
gimmick.
the randomized dungeon. I'm a huge fan of the randomized dungeon. Like, I loved it when I was a kid playing games like PC games and stuff like Rogue and Moria and stuff.
Yeah.
Because it felt like it's just this infinite game. You could play an infinite number of times because every time you play it, it's like a
different.
new layout. Yeah.
It is cool. I love those gimmicks in the Wrath of a Shardalon, like whereas you're walking, the path like unfolds in front of you.
Yeah, randomly. You have like your stack, and then you just like grab like a random one. And sometimes it's not random. Sometimes like the game instructs you like which one to put next. But yeah, it's just very cool. It feels like real exploration.
And there's another gimmick too in those games where you can do. It's a pretty cool one player like method you can use.
Yeah.
I've done that.
The solo game option is really good because people who are into Dungeons and Dragons, how many of them have friends, and then how many of them have friends that want to get together with them as often as they want to play this game, Once they introduce a solo edition, like sales go through the roof, because that does seem kind of odd, this it's like you got to have other people, and then some of them are like, oh, you need 3 or more people to play.
They're like, no, really, no friends required. I mean, really, there's no need for like human contact, 0. It's like,
all that stuff is so cool with like all those like little bits and pieces and stuff, but it is kind of like the imagination is like the most powerful, like those things are kind of limiting, but when it enters like the realm of just pure imagination, it's kind of like but again, it's hard to let go of those. There's a set where it comes with cardboard cutouts of friends you can position around you. You can connect it to your train set, so someone looking in from outside will think they see like people walking around, but it's just like a cardboard cutout on your train set. Dungeons and Dragons is like a proprietary thing. I like the larger, broader definition of just sort of like imaginary games,
And there's a new movie coming out, which we'll have to see. And there's an action figure line from Hasbro they've released in conjunction. Yeah. I happen to have one right here.
Oh, cool. Show me.
What we have here is the first, and I don't know if it's the first, but it's a Hugh Grant action
Hugh Grant. Right, yeah, like I'm trying to think what other things Hugh Grant would have been in where he could have his own action figure. But yeah, there it is.
It's the first Hugh Grant action figure. We can open this up if we...
Oh, cool. I saw some of the... Like, I didn't see this one, but I saw, like, at Target they had the Saturday morning cartoon Dungeons and Dragons
I did not see
those. Like, they all... This, I assume this one does, too. Like, they, like, come with dice. Or maybe it doesn't. No. They had, like, a Dungeon Master and Venger 2 set, and then they had, all the like young warriors and stuff.
Dude, that's awesome. I'm tracking those down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that this... I don't think Hugh Grant has had a action figure before.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, like Paddington. I don't think he had an action figure for his Paddington.
Or his mugshot.
Right. Yeah. They have like, like the Love Actually where he has like dancing action and stuff.
They have the Hugh Grant 9 months. He's like, oh, I'm not ready to be a father.
We do have to like do a deep like Satanic Panic. Oh, just Satanic Panic. Did your Dungeons and Dragons playing escalate into anything? Did it lead you towards heavy metal music? Did it lead you towards, Satanism or, anything like that? That'll be another.
Of the beast.
See you in hell, my friend.
Washing the dog.
Watching the dog.
It's like a pentagram on my hand.
So we got this Hugh Grant, the action figure.
Yeah, there he is. I mean, like,
here, this is the actual figure.
who does he look like?
Right, but then here's the concept art where they have like this, like painting, this highly photo reference painting. But yeah, the photo of the actual thing is not so flattering.
No, looks pale.
And, what's his name is Forge, and yet he looks like he's like a rogue or something. Like
he's got a crossbow, like Wayne Newton, or no, not Wayne Newton, Hugh Hefner kind of jacket.
Yeah, on the side, Forge is a human rogue and currently the Lord of Neverwinter. So yeah, he does look roguish.
Yeah, he's
I think of the rogue archetype in Dungeons and Dragons. I think of sort of like a shadier character and more kind of like maybe like a little bit unwashed or whatever. But yeah, that's right. This is another kind of rogue. This is maybe even more specifically a rake. Like he's kind of a charmer and stuff. But
he might pull some shit. Though.
Right, exactly. Oh, of course. Yeah, he's up to something, but he's flashy. Flash with trash, as my parents would say. Or trash with flash, as my parents would say. Why don't you crack it open?
Let's crack this thing open. First, Hugh Grant action figure. Yeah,
the Hugh Grant action figure.
He's like, it comes with prostitute picking up action or whatever.
I'm just an action figure.
or
he's standing next to a Barbie. Standing next to a Barbie, talking about a blah blah blah.
Okay, all right,
Okay, so
minimal
nothing
packaging, right?
Yeah, minimal.
I'm liking this new Hasbro jamming in the. Would you care to pull them out of the?
Yeah, cool looking crossbow. I mean, I could see this coming. Like even if you don't end up being a big fan of your Hugh Grant action figure.
Another figure could use
use out of that. Yeah.
Looks like he's.
That's the other thing. Those other ones I saw at Target, how they had the dice with them. It seemed like you could work it into the game. And here he is.
There he is.
Oh, the actual thing looks better than the photo on the back of the box. He looks a little more like Hugh Grant.
That's
here.
not too shabby.
It's not the the jacket's kind of nice. It's like it's plastic. It moves around a little bit, and he's got his cravat.
There he is.
Yeah.
He's
He's got the buccaneer boots.
Got something else in here too.
But yeah, some dice would be like. I like that they like. I feel like they're missing the boat by not.
Oh, it's a goblet.
Yeah, he's got his crunk. But I feel like they're missing the boat a little bit by not having like some little like card with like his stats, that you can incorporate into the game, and the dice. And I wonder if those sort of Saturday morning cartoon Dungeons and Dragons figures would have those, because they have dice, but I wonder if they have the stats too.
It's like hair real or hair his. It's like sex. Yes, please.
Well, yeah, because this Hugh Grant looks like sort of classic Hugh Grant. Like he's got a tiny bit of like in the photo here, he's got a tiny bit of gray around the temples, and then his hair is just like pretty much all dark here. But then like in Paddington, he's like mature Hugh Grant. He's like all gray and kind of has like
skip the dye.
He has Charles Nelson Riley glasses. And
that's the guy I was thinking of too. Yeah. When you mentioned the cravat, I was like brain malfunctioning.
Yeah. But it looks like they maybe they used some like de-aging, some
Robert De
Niro de-aging on him.
Hugh Grant is known for his crossbow prowess.
Yeah.
This is not too shabby.
Yeah, it's a nice figure, and it'll be interesting like once the movie comes out to see if like like you never want to see that character ever again because the movie's a piece of shit, or if it becomes like your new favorite, cinema character, he enters the pantheon of great characters.
He has what is his quote that he's yet to utter in the movie?
Yeah.
Like, what's his famous like? Never thought I'd see the day
Hugh Grant action. You've been writing letters to Hasbro, and you finally got your wish.
Thank God, I could stop my hunger strike.
I'm Tom Scioli, author of I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby, the Epic Life of the King of Comics. And you can find a pre-order link for I Am Stan in the show notes below, as well as an order now link for Jack Kirby.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli or on Instagram at Tom_Scioli.
Follow me on Instagram at cinema_tomb.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time in the Grantiverse. I was rifling through Hugh's pants. I was rifling through.
And he's got a dagger in like a little sheath. That's a nice touch.
Nice touch. Look at that.
So yeah, just another element of the universe.
I was patting him down and discovered a dagger.
You found a bulge in Hugh Grant's pants, and you were like, "Is that a dagger in your pocket?"
Happy to see me.